So our part which was remaining was we went with getting or doing the entity views as well, right? We went ahead, we created these ones, we went ahead and created the transformations as well, right?
Yeah.
And in the transformations, we saw that, okay, what are direct transformations and what is cleanse function. So in the cleanse function, we went ahead and created the registry ID validations, correct? So
Right.
what it does is, so these all things are done. So we'll be seeing how this will work as well today. So later part which remains is tasks extensions, right? Task is somewhere what we can say that these are utilized for two purposes. In task, there is triggers. So over here, you can see that there are few default triggers which we have created. And these default triggers are utilized to create or to have an update using all the business entities with all the rules. So which role will be utilized to create the records by utilizing the business entity? That is what we decide over here, either update or anything. So we can go ahead and use in a single create update. We can utilize all those things that I can go ahead and utilize that in create itself. The update can be there. In create event, I can go ahead and do a modify hierarchy or matched BE as well. But why we went ahead and created different right now is so that we can have a, if there is any workflow to be triggered, okay, we can utilize all these triggers in a separate ways. That is why we have created all these things as differently. Otherwise these all triggers will be utilized to use as over here. So you can see when we go ahead and do a create, there is a file attachment tasks. Then there is, you can see there, these templates. These templates are actually utilized by the ActiveOS workflow by the name of that what all things will be by default in them. We can go ahead and customize it in the ActiveOS. It is nowhere to be utilized in the UI right now. It is all the part which will be utilized by the ActiveOS workflow. Okay, like the template and the task type. These two things will be utilized by workflows. Triggers on the second thing are utilized by both. Triggers are also utilized for creating or for starting up the workflow or to utilize it by default workflows as well, which are internal, which will let you update or create anything without any approval process. So triggers are majorly utilized for two purposes, either to start the workflow or to have a event or to have a functionality to go ahead and create the records. Otherwise, your E360 will be only utilized for update for reading the records. So if we go over here in E360, okay, there are various applications which have been created. So in new, you can see that I can see party table over here, party entity, right? Why? Because in over here, we have create BE and all the roles are there. And the business entity is only party. If I'll remove this particular business entity from over here, then all the business entities which are over here will be showcased. Let's see that. We'll just go ahead, delete the party, which means it will have. So if we are not going ahead and stating anything over here, which means all the things which are there will be showcased. So we'll just go ahead, close this up for a second, so that all the cache will be removed and the data will be synced. The configuration will be synced up. We'll go into party application. We'll go into new. We'll see all these business entities have came up now. Otherwise, we were only having party, right? So this actually the task in the task, the triggers are utilized for all these purposes. But if we'll go ahead and state that, okay, in this particular trigger, let's say in the create, I want to start the workflow. So it will ask me which template do you want to use, which task type it will be utilizing, what is the task kind. It will be a review, merge, unmerge, which one it will be using. What is the Activos process name or the workflow name, which will be starting up. Okay. So all these things will be configured just for starting the workflow. What workflow will be started? So tasks are majorly utilized for these purposes. Okay, and each thing have their own events in over here. And roles we have gone ahead and use star. Otherwise, we can have a different roles. Whatever roles are there, we can utilize that particular role. And in that role, what all business entities they can go ahead and create or update or modify. That is what it is used for. Okay. Any question over here?
So Ajit, this will be always used to initiate those Activos workflows
Correct.
only.
Correct.
So Activos
Not
workflows
just
is
only. If I
okay.
am not specifying that, okay, this will start a workflow, this will be utilizing the internal algorithm to do that particular event for you in the UI.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Otherwise, you cannot
Okay.
go ahead and utilize it for the purpose.
Hmm. Okay.
So in Activos, we are utilizing this like this particular events. That's what you are telling, right?
Correct. Correct.
We are calling, kind of calling.
We, by this event, we will be calling the workflows.
Okay. Um, so you have any example to show, like in Activos, how they will be calling
So let's
this?
say whenever we are creating a record. So let's say if I go over here, I'll go into party and I'll say, okay, okay. Anything which I'm actually going ahead and creating and then saving it.
Mm-hmm.
Should it save directly or should it call a workflow? Right? You got that? So you can say, let's say I'm going ahead with this. Status is, let's say, active would be A. Registry ID should be, let's say, okay. Last name is E dash. Alright. First name should be, let's say, and let's say we'll go ahead, create the city as New Jersey 123 Main Street, and we'll just go ahead and use the country as US, we'll say. Okay. So over here, when I go ahead and save, this record will be going ahead and getting inserted into directly base object. See, now this record has been already inserted. Now I can go ahead and edit it as well, right? This has got its party ID for us, right? It's showcasing the row ID object of this particular table. So it directly went ahead and inserted in the base object. But do we want a direct insertion or do we want a workflow to be initiated whenever we go ahead and save? So that is what we go ahead and do over here. If that particular event is being triggered, does it needs to go ahead and update a particular workflow or to start a workflow, or does it directly go ahead and without any workflows we'll go ahead and save that? So that is what we are going over here with.
So Ajay, suppose if we are not calling any Actios workflow, so you told right that internal algorithm it can be utilized.
Correct.
So I believe this Actios, as you mentioned, I think it will go to that approval flow, those things,
Correct.
right?
Correct. Correct. So
So
active
when you say,
workflows are approval steps.
yeah, right. So when if it is handled in this internal step, so can you just give some scenarios like what all things will be done or how
So it
it
won't
works?
utilize your hub state indicator as 0 for pending or anything. It will directly go ahead and it will just store over there.
Okay.
So these things are utilized. So let's say my data manager who is actually approving, he is going ahead and updating any record. So there is no supervisor in front of him, right? So basically what he'll do, he'll just go ahead, update any attribute and he'll just go save. That's it. Once he go ahead and save, it will just go ahead and save that particular record. It will not trigger any workflow because he does not need any superior's approval to go ahead and approve it. But whereas a data steward needs a manager's approval, so what we'll do over here is in the update, we'll go ahead and use the role as data steward rather than using a data manager. So
Okay.
any data manager, if he is going ahead and updating the record, there is no workflow which will be updated, which will be created for him. So we'll have two different triggers. One trigger would be there, which will be starting the workflow, and the other will be there, which will not be starting the workflow. And all these things will be there with different role types. Okay.
Mhm. So my question was say other than this Activos workflows, you told right if that is not only the single scenario, even this can be utilized in this internal things also.
Yeah, so this is the
So
internal one now that I went ahead and created a record. So it will call the
hmm,
internal algorithm that, okay, there is no
hmm.
workflow which is being needed. So it will go ahead and skip all that part and it will go ahead and save it.
Oh, that's all. Okay, then that case there won't be any triggers called, right?
Trigger is called, but the trigger states that you don't have to go ahead and start any
Hmm.
workflow. So you can skip that part and directly update that record.
Okay, that is the trigger. Okay, okay, fine.
Okay.
Hmm.
So let's say how many records do we have? We'll just go ahead and see that. We'll just go ahead and search over here. We'll just do any party search so that we'll get a registry ID. Any registry ID will be fine for us. So you can see there are two registry IDs. I can go ahead and use this one as well, right? So I can go ahead and update this registry ID, and we'll go ahead and put this registry ID in place. Okay. So what we'll go ahead. So I'm just stating that how this particular, we went ahead and did the transformation validation, right? So how that will work. If I'll just do like this and save it. So it will just state validation. Registry ID is already present in request. Specify the satisfied condition of the validation. So it will discard that. But if I just go ahead and do any updates over here, it will let me save that. But from now on, if I'll go ahead and update any record, anything, if you say, so unless and until I'm updating using this one, it will not be there. So any changes, how it will showcase us? It showcases with this particular part. Any update. If there is anything which is being changed, so the changed attribute will be showcased around that. But if that particular validation rule have gone through and we have put up in the views, then this particular registry ID will have gone ahead and we will be getting every single time we will be getting a issue, because it would be getting the value from itself, because our cleanse function or the validation rule does not see that is it the same party ID. So it would be giving us issues for us. So the validation rule would have a loop in the views, but right now it will not trigger any validation rule unless and until that attribute is being updated. So that is where our updates, edits, and how the validation rule will be showcased to us. Okay. Now coming back over here, other than tasks, we have extensions. Now in extensions, we have two things. One is dash provider, and the other three are basically utilized for external calls. As I stated earlier, that if there are validations which are needed and where the cleanse functions are having a limitation, so we will go ahead and set up the external validation. So how we will be going ahead and using the external validation? We first go ahead, create a whistle. We cannot create any whistle over here because it goes ahead and verifies it. Okay. So we create a whistle over here with a name and a URL. This URL will be verified and service and XML namespace will be populated automatically. Then once this is being created, we go ahead and create the SOAP services, which utilizes your whistle file. See whistle over here. Once you just select the whistle, all these things will be auto-populated. And once these things are there, then we go ahead and create the external calls. In these external calls, we'll state which particular business entity needs to go through, which the SOAP service, which particular operation, and what all service phase. Service phase means do we used to have before read or after read, or when we need it to be done. and all the business entities which are needed to go through that external validations. That is how we go ahead and configure it. Okay. Whereas the DaaS provider is data as a service provider. Over here, we will be utilizing what all services we are trying to go ahead and use, what all SOAP services we'll be utilizing, what all the business entities we are going ahead and showcasing that, okay, this DaaS provider will be utilizing which one and what source system will be there to read that particular record. So when we use business entity services, we use the DaaS providers to read and search if there that is the only thing which is required. But if we have to do all the CRUD operation, then we use direct SIF calls using the business entities. Question? Any questions, guys?
No, nothing from my side.
So that is where these extensions will be used. These DaaS provider will be utilized, you can say 0.01%. In all your projects, it would be 0.01 projects or maximum it will be 1% of projects which uses DaaS providers. And there are 10 to 15% of the projects which will utilize your external call validations. The rest 85% of your projects will never use your extensions. Only 10% of the projects will be not using any workflows, whereas all the 90% will be utilizing your workflows. Okay. So that is what business entity part is there for. Okay.